Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 32 breakdown for the Top Cut online regionals that happened this past weekend. It was 10 rounds of Swiss into this top 32 cut that we see here today, and a couple of things before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We've been making a lot of OP06 content, and it does definitely help the channel grow. And then also, I do want to shout out Top Cut for not only running the event and giving us the deck list, but also for letting myself and Brian from Stage Zero do the live stream for this event. It was a lot of fun. I really do like doing these, and if you guys want to see the live stream, you can check it out on my YouTube or Twitch for members or subscribers respectively, and it will also be re-uploaded onto Stage Zero in the next day or two, and you guys can watch it edited down to just the rounds over there as well. So links to Stage Zero is in the description, as also links to my website Eggman Events, where you can find all of these deck lists as well as many other events that we've been covering for OP06 as well. But getting on into this event, we did have again just over 1,000 players, 1,004, 10 rounds of Swiss best of one into this top 32. And man, I've been saying the big three for this card game right now in OP06 has been Katakuri, Moria, and Sakazuki, and this event definitely proved that to me. With 10 Katakuri, 10 Moria, and 9 Sakazuki in the top 32 cut, there are only 3 decks that weren't in there: Yamato, Enel, and Trafalgar Law. And even then, like, they are all yellow and black decks besides the one copy of Trafalgar Law. So I think it's pretty skewed to show that how these decks are very, very good. And we do have an approximate leader breakdown as well. These are not exact numbers, but we can see that, 2/3 of the meta for this event was one of those 3 decks, and all of them kind of up converted into top 32, where 25% or so Katakuris were playing in the event, but over that we're able to get into the top 32. So everything else, so I think like these numbers are kind of what they represent for this meta. I think they're not too outlandish for what we've been seeing, but I think the one thing that I was a little disappointed was no Reiju topping, at least not top 32. I think a couple did sneak into an X2 finish. I just wasn't able to get that information, at least on time of recording, but I may be able to update it on the website if I do find that information afterwards. But yeah, Reiju, I think a lot of people have been playing it, but it just didn't make it into this top 32. And again, when I was making this page, I'm just, oh, another Katakuri, another Moria, another Sakazuki. Like they were very, very present. And even when doing the stream, it was very difficult to dodge one of these 3 leaders when trying to do any of the matchups as well. So I think it's dominated for these 3, and for more or less most of these decks are figured out in some capacity. I think Katakuri has some different builds every once in a while, and I know there's just kind of like 2, I'd say, mini build differences between Sakazuki and the Moria's, I think, pretty understood as well. So anyways, those are kind of my opinions overall. We're going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders, but I do also want to say that we did have a lot of other YouTubers top in this event as well. I've done my best to put them on this sheet, so if you guys want to see this code, so like Disfire for Michael Curry, Cross AI, Awaken TCG, and also Vampire Gaming, all of them top there, so make sure to check out their channels as well. And if there's any content creators I missed and or don't know about, please let me know, and I'd love to add them to this page too. Anyways, we're going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders, starting off with Michael Curry's Katakuri. And if the name sounds familiar or the build looks similar, it's because this is the exact same player and build that won the Carta Magica regionals this past the weekend before this one, rather. So Michael was on quite the hot streak with this deck in general. It's very, very powerful when it goes off. I've been doing some testing with Katakuri myself in particular these last couple days. And one thing I also want to mention too is that when I originally looked at this list last week, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about the Brûlés. I think they're just okay for what they are. They're very easy to remove blockers in this kind of game, but it is also just a big bomb pirates, because you do kind of need some more targets for your Charlotte Puddings and your Pero Sparrows, which a year later almost, right, they're still like the best opening for yellow, like putting into Pero Sparrow, which is kind of wild. And so being able to get more targets for that too, and sometimes I don't have the out, just being able to say, like, you know what, you have to have the Hound Blaze, you have to have the reduction, or what have you. Brûlé can still win you the game on the spot, which is absurd in where we're at, but it is true in a lot of ways. I also think like the idea of 7-drop Linlin is very good in this meta if you play it on 7 Dawn. Being able to follow it up with 10-drop and the reject, It's just too good. It's so easy for Katakuri to put your opponent to one compared to I think other yellow leaders like Enel, and then being able to just say, oh well, you are at now 0, and then 6 Dawn on your leader turns you into a 12k. And if they can't get out of that, you kind of win the game, which like Sakazuki and Moria, they kind of depend on their blockers more than not. And so if you're able to get rid of their blockers, they really can't get out of a really big swing, which is very dangerous when additionally Reject can get rid of cards with just its effect, like a Sabo after the protections wore off, or 200 million volts can get rid of Borsalino as a blocker for the turn too. So honestly, very strong deck, very obnoxious deck, I think, right now. I think Katakuri is finally kind of cemented it in one of the best decks in this game after being like kind of like tier 1.5 for the last like year or so since release. I think this is definitely like the strongest it's ever been. So congratulations to Michael for their finish there, and we'll see if he's able to continue his streak in OP06. Next up, we have our second place Gecko Moria, which is Chris Sock. Chris also has quite the good pedigree for some events this year. He was able to win 2 of the events back in February before OP06 came out, but and I believe he was using Purple Luffy at the time as well. But it's made the transition to Gecko Moria, which I think is one of the popular decks that people are just transitioning to right now. There are a lot of similarities to Sakazuki as it is, but I think this one has like the resource management is different. The biggest thing that I know from Gecko Moria is that he is 5 life, meaning that you are more defensive. You can get more card advantage because of that. It's harder for some decks to get you down to like, obviously like Katakuri has a harder time putting Moria down to 1 compared to a 4 life leader, so that does become impactful as well. And then just the kind of flexibility and consistency in your plays. I think Sakazuki is probably the stronger, maybe top end at times, but from a consistency standpoint, Gecko Moria has a lot of good tools for that. So obviously Absalom, Dr. Hogback, and Perona are really good spots. We also have Gecko Moria, which is searchable in this deck by using like your milling effects from like Sindri or other sources, and then being able to use Hogback to get it back to your hand for your next turn. I think that's very strong. And then just a slew of removal cards. So when the meta first started, I'm like, maybe we play Ice Age, maybe we play Great Eruption. It can be helpful. But it's definitely been proven that 4 of each has been very, very strong for what meta that we're in right now. And it's been very helpful to get. When you can play Absalom every turn for 3 Dawn, you want to be able to get some reduction to pair with it. So I understand why this is so important. And if we have too many copies of this, obviously Great Eruption, you can just cycle for 1, or they can be your discard card for Gecko Moria as well. So very strong deck. Last card I'd say is that Sabo, I think, is creeping up as one of the best blockers in this game continuously. It's hard to remove, and especially in the mirror match, Sabo can really stop your opponent from doing anything as long as they're not playing like a copy or 2 of Brook as well. So this is a version from Chris, and congratulations for their second place finish there. Next up, we have Sakazuki, and we're going to look at 2 builds real quick. We do have Jeff's build as well as Cameron's build as well. They both got into an X1 finish with this, which I don't think I mentioned. All of the X1s were one of the big 3, right? All of the Yamato, the Enel play, and the Star Deck 10 Law, they are all X2 finishes as well. So again, very, very impressive there for these 3 decks to take all those spots in this one. But I didn't want to go over both these lists because I'd say Jeff's build is more of like the standard build, if I'm allowed to call it like that. And then we also have the build that Cameron used running the Marineford, which I didn't think, which is more popular from at least my mind. Giovanni's finishing in the No Heroes Regionals last weekend. This was not a card or kind of build that was in my knowledge until he talked with it, but if it was attributed to someone else, please let me know. But I think that knowing that this deck build exists and other players are playing it, just Cameron was the highest placing one with Marineford in the build as it was. But it's really, really interesting. You'll see that there's no copies of Great Eruption, and there's no versions of what Ice Age. There's no reduction in it besides Marineford, but the idea that you're able to get this continual -2 between your Sakazuki leader and your Marineford means you're in a really good spot. Especially since Houndblaze, Ama, and Rob Lucci all get removal at like 2, you can get rid of 4 costs very, very easily, which are very, very present in your Gecko Moria. And most of your removal cards as well tend to bottom deck with like the Houndblaze and the Ama. So being able to bottom deck the cards that they'd want to recycle out of their trash means that Sakazuki can have a really good matchup into that if you're able to find your Marineford and get it to stick kind of thing. So I think that's one of the big reasons you do this, especially since means you want a leg up in that matchup because you're going to see it very often, I think. But going back to, again, the more basic build, and this is, I think, like a good transition from like where it was in OP05. We added our Tashigis, right? We found room to play our Gecko Morias as well. We're not playing any 10-drop Kaidos anymore, and being able to just get some removal, like the 5th copy of Houndblaze and Ama, I think is really nice. It can also get like the double removal at time, which can be very devastating. Being able to bottom deck cards means you get pretty much around every protection that isn't Enel, 7-drop, which is fantastic, and then Great Eruption and Ice Age for that other reduction and everything. So you guys kind of know what this deck list looks like. We know what the card pool is more or less, and there's just some slight tweaks to it, but man, yeah, Sakazuki is still in a really good spot. And if you have the tempo of removal and just prevent your opponent from doing anything, it just feels very, very oppressive when it goes off. So again, this is Jeff's build and Cameron's build, and congratulations to their top finishes there. Next up, we have Zhehua's version of Yamato, and I've been kind of calling this like the hybrid version of the deck. The reason I do say that is because the two versions I kind of knew beforehand were like the more aggressive build where you just play a bunch of yellow and be very aggressive, and like the defensive build or like the fortress build, which ran a lot of green and was more defensive on that side. But this is kind of like an in the middle version of it as well. The big difference is there's like we are playing like the 8-drop Kid, for example, and using this as like a defensive wall if we need to. Obviously, I think Gecko Moria and Sakazuki does have some really good ways to remove this, but at least we do have like the Don Quixote Rosinante in the build to prevent that a little bit if we can. But then we're also playing like the aggressive like Holy Ohm, which is great for being able to play, just have cards for our Dawn for our Yamato effect. We're not playing the Mihawk, but we're instead using the Izo for like some ways to rest cards, which I think is really important. And there's no copies of the Kiko Nojo as well, which normally we'd see these pretty often, I think, in most copies, especially since this was quote-unquote built for Yamato. I do say, like, when I test this deck, sometimes it's like just stuck in hand, or I don't really have a way to get rid of it, and I don't really even want to play, spend 4 Dawn to play it more times than not. So it's interesting to decide not play it and be rewarded for it. But we do just kind of have all these like weenies, like we have the Shura, we have the Onami, which we can boost up with our leader effect once again. We have a couple copies of Gadatsu, which is also a Sky Island, so Ashura has more targets. And it looks like a really interesting build that I might have to try out a little bit more. So all of our event cards are also Sky Island. So like Shura being able to find reject if we need to is really nice. Our 200 million volts to help us end the game, I think that's helpful. And then obviously Hody Jones is in a really good spot to help us finish the game as Yamato as well, especially since it's technically a 10k rush if we use our Yamato effect with it. So I really do like Yamato as a leader just because I feel like it's more flexible with its deck building compared to a lot of others. And I look forward to seeing more unique builds like this one. So this is Zhehua's build here, and congratulations for their top 32 finish with this one. And then next up we have Enel. So this is the version from Oscar, and this is like a really weird build too, I will say. This is like a more, I would say, almost aggressive build with the idea that we are playing so many of these cards that I would normally say they're for Yamato, right? We play Kikunojo, which isn't too surprising, but we also play the Nekomamushi, which Dawn times 2, you can attack active characters, but all of these just play from our life at 3 or less. So Dawn times 2 when attacking, you can discard a card, KO something with a cost less than or equal to your opponent's current life cards, but which just turns into 3 or less if we play this for free. But the biggest thing is that we get to play these off our life for free. So it's an interesting kind of rush version. We have like Charlotte Cracker as well. We have Satori, we have Gadatsu, and then we also have like the Enel Katakuri Yamato top end. So we still have our top end, but we're not running any copies of Reject. We're just playing the 0 cost event and the 200 million volts. And it's, again, a really interesting list that I would have to probably try some a little bit as well. But being less defensive, having less bricks in hand, and just having way more things that could play off life in case we needed to get those extra swings, I think is very, very interesting. We're not playing any copies of Onami, like Beige is there, and Sanji for defensive purposes, as well as all of our, you're the one who should disappear in 200 million volts that you can cycle your life with that one. But it's a very interesting build that I'd have to try out. loadouts too. So I don't know really how to analyze it much more than that, but congratulations to Oscar for going X2 with this one. And then lastly, we do have our one copy of Trafalgar Law. This is Dexter's version of it here, and we do have a lot of new cards from OP06 to help this deck out. Specifically, we do have the Shariah, which is really helpful for just being like a good blocker, as well as just being able to attack up if we need to, defend. It just kind of does the two things you need. We just kind of needed a good blocker for this deck to be able to play off our leader effect, and I think this one's a pretty good one. We also have like the Vinsmoke Reiju, which is I think one of the best cards of support, even probably though it wasn't intended for this deck. Being able to just play this card and draw two almost every time is fantastic, especially since it does play off the leader for free, and I think that's helpful there. We do have like the Raise Max as an additional 4 copies of Gordon, which is maybe a little bit greedy, but it obviously paid out. And then we also have the Kamazo, which lets you get rid of some like 1s and 2s, which is kind of important when you're playing against Sakazuki, when they have so many of like the Toshigis and their copies of brand new. Being able to get the removal for those as well, can double up on them, is kind of nice too. So unfortunately, it's KOing it by cost, which I would have probably liked if it was like 2,000 or less, but obviously it's a purple card, so that's kind of the idea for it. But other than that, I think this deck it does have some potential. I do know it's getting like more and more support as we keep going through this meta, so I'm going to be interested to see how good it really ends up being, and especially since, you know, when it was released in Star Deck 10, I think the deck was pretty hyped, and this kind of was a little bit lackluster here in North America, so that's probably why I'm maybe been ranking it a little bit lower than maybe it deserves, but I do know that it's going to get better, and I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what that looks like as well. So anyways, that is the list here. Congratulations to Dexter for their finish. And that's going to be it for this breakdown. Again, if you guys made it to this part of the video, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. You obviously like my content enough to make it this far, so yeah, I think it's a good bet for future content as well. And if you guys want any of these deck lists, make sure to check out my website, Eggman Events, which is linked below, and check out the VODs either on my YouTube or Twitch or on Stage 0 once it gets re-uploaded later this week. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.